Hey, security peeps. This is Renee Small back again in our Breaking into Cybersecurity webinar podcast series. And I am here with my fabulous co-host, Chris Foulon. Chris, say hi to the crew.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. And then I'm also here with Shivani Karikar. Shivani, say hi to everyone.
Hi.
And Shivani is with us. She's actually here in the DC metro area, which is awesome. And she has an amazing background, and I can't wait for her to jump in and tell us all about how she became the person that she is today, which is cybersecurity analyst. So Shivani's doing some awesome work in incident response, making sure she responds to those incidents in like a couple of minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, as soon as they come in. So Shivani, talk to us, tell us about your background, how you got into the cybersecurity space, how you became even interested in cyber, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, great. So when I was a kid, I believe me and my sister would always pass notes to each other. And that was a common thing. We all would do that to just share information without anybody ever trying to see it. However, it was easy when somebody would just pick up that note and read it. So we came across this one book. It was about mathematics, but they had a cipher in there. So it was called Pigpen Cipher. And what they did is they just converted every letter into a symbol. And it was easy to cipher and decipher it. We just used that to talk to each other when nobody would know what we're talking about, but we could just still have a conversation. So that was really fun to see that we were sharing this in plain sight and nobody knew what we were talking about. So that was interesting just growing up. I wasn't aware that was cryptology. So after growing up, I realized that, hey, this is cybersecurity. This is how you can keep your information secure when you want your privacy. So that was kind of interesting. I did do a lot of business before. So I transitioned from the business side to the IT side, and now I'm in cybersecurity.
A funny side story about the Pigpen cipher. Renee and I were recently at B-Sides Nova, and one of the challenges that they had there is that they had a speaker that talked about cryptography, and they had, within the symbol of the conference, they had a Pigpen cipher, and the audience members had to figure out what it said to solve the challenge.
Oh, wow. That must have been fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotta come next
They also
year
had
to B-Sides.
Yeah, I love B-Sides. They also had something similar in escape rooms. So I think they always have different puzzles that they give you. So it's really interesting to keep in touch with that side.
So what made you switch from the business side to cybersecurity?
So the first jump was into the development side, more into just the entire IT domain instead of just cybersecurity focusing, because we saw an increase with computers being involved in your day-to-day operations. So when I was doing anything business related, I had to know the technology. I had to know several tools, and it just got me curious about how far can I take this. And I think there are so many resources out there that it's not really hard to just watch a video and get really hooked onto things. So I think it was just some Coursera courses that I went through that got me more interested in IT in general.
Which aspect of IT did you first start in?
So the first thing I did was the easy WordPress websites, because they're the easiest way in, I would think. So it doesn't really scare you, but you also can play with it. So I made websites with WordPress, Joomla, and then I went on to making iOS apps. And it was really fun to just have something that you can instantly see instead of some task that can take months and months, and then you don't see anything, any effect. So the websites and apps made me feel like I was accomplished. And then security side interested me because I felt like data security was not taken as seriously. So when I was making websites, it could have been easy for anybody. Sorry, can you see me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. We can't see you, but that's definitely interesting. As you can see, it, for example, Facebook, as big company as it is, they just got publicly ridiculed for storing their
Oh yeah,
back-end usernames and passwords in plain text. So
plain text.
exactly. So it's definitely critical to have. With regards to your journey, so you went from web development to iOS. Where did you go next?
So after that, I started going to hackathons and CTFs. The first one I think was by SecureSet. It was really interesting because they actually had their CDF, which was really cool to know that, because I had an impression that you would have to be an expert in some kind of meetup and
Hmm.
try to participate. But that was really encouraging. After going to like many of realized you actually don't have to be an expert. You can just go in, and most of the people are really friendly and they will help you out. So the CTFs were just different challenges that they gave us to break into websites and get all the flags. That was really cool. Then I started learning about Kali Linux. So I think like a little like step by step that got
Hmm.
me closer and closer to security. And then I thought it was, time to just do the professionally instead of as a hobby.
Oh,
So,
Renee?
Shivani, I think you accidentally put your video thing on or clicked your video off, and I can't seem to get you back on the video. We can hear you though.
Yeah, I believe I wasn't even using my mouse pad. I'm not
There's a
sure
little
how it.
button. It's weird. In any event, Chris, you got to jump in.
So you were doing more Kali Linux. What
Mhm.
role were you doing working at this time? Was that all for fun, or were you still in a traditional business role at the time?
Yeah, so when I was trying to pick up on these tools on the side, I was doing most of the business tasks and some IT.
Okay.
So it wasn't completely like a professional IT focused role. However, I think it did give me an advantage because my last company, and they are a training provider, so it exposed me to a lot of IT concepts and like networking with other people easily. So I could be in touch with that side, and it grew on me instead of just being on the business side completely. So I was
Yeah,
doing half and
definitely.
half. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And then what was that pivot point that made you want to change from what you're doing to something security focused?
So it was, I think, when I felt like I had more interest in there, because when I was about cybersecurity through online courses, more and more chapters started making sense to me and got me more interested. Then
Hmm.
I started to take more, I guess, tangible steps. So I was more certifications now. And then after that, try to get a job in there. So I was planning more towards it because it kept building up. So the first one, the first one I started with was AWS. But after that, got Security Plus and CEH.
Okay.
So it was, I think it just kept, it never decreased after that.
Okay. And then you started applying for security roles. What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I was under the impression, because I'm an immigrant, so I moved here in 2014, and just learning a lot of things might take, it takes a long time to understand what works and what doesn't. So I had heard that you're supposed to apply online on job boards or on their websites, but I feel like a lot of times they don't even get, like people don't even notice, and these applications don't really go anywhere. And it
Hmm.
always feels like they're going into a black hole, except, like, of course, there's some exceptions. But I would say for the majority of it, I have never had any success with that. I think most of my success came out of meetups and different Slack channels. So I went to meetups at least once a week when I was job hunting, and I also like went to job fairs. But then I started increasing the meetup more than job fairs, because they would get a lot of resumes, and I think they would have like a backlog, because one job fair would give you like 50 resumes, and then you can't follow up with each and every one of them. But at a meetup, you have like that one-on-one connection. So you are able to like network a little more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the Slack channel that I use the most is Women Who Code DC Slack channel. They have a job group in there where they post jobs very actively. And I was surprised to see that, because a lot of people have these initiatives, but it's hard to like follow through. But it's a really good community, so that was really helpful. And just in general, I feel like if I apply somewhere, I used to just be like patient and wait to get a response. But I feel like now I've understood that I would need to take active steps in following up. So I know that it can be hard sometimes when you don't have a point of contact, but I just go on LinkedIn and try to see which recruiters are in that area for that company, and send them a note and say, hey, I've applied for this position. If you have if you are the right person, and if you have a minute, could you please let me know if I'm a good, fit for that? But that went a long way for me, because like, of course, there were some recruiters who were just like, no, not the right person, or they wouldn't respond. But even if out of 10, I got one response, it was better closure for me. And a lot of them directed me in the right places. So it was much better than online applications that just send you an automated response saying, hey, we regret to inform you, blah, blah, blah. So that was
Yeah,
helpful.
Shivani, that's very helpful for people because two things right, that you touched on, the Slack channels, which I know are really popular right now. But I don't think anyone so far that we've spoken to has talked about, applying through Slack channels and getting opportunities through Slack channels. So I'm really happy that you talked about that one. And then also, obviously, with doing the follow up, and not only when you did go to, well, secondly, the meetups, which is fantastic. Chris and I always talk about the networking opportunities when you go to these various conferences. Whenever you can meet a human being, someone face to face, and it's not, like you said, going into a black hole, it's always 1,000 times better. And then, like you said, you increased your attendance at the various meetups, which I tell people that all the time too. Like, just keep going and going, so they know you, they know your face, they know your name. Eventually you will get something. And then the follow up piece is so critical because me being a recruiter, I get hundreds. Like, sometimes in my email, I open up LinkedIn. Between LinkedIn and email, there are literally hundreds of emails daily. And it's emails from hiring managers, HR people, candidates. It's like so much. And so people totally slip through the cracks. And sometimes, they might, from a candidate perspective, it might be like, oh, the recruiter isn't following up or paying attention or whatever. But anytime, when somebody pings me 2-3 times, then I'm like, okay, I have to follow up with this person because clearly they, I have to shift my attention. So I'm glad you made that point that you did follow up. And like you said, when you didn't get offended, like you reach out to 10, you get a response from one. That's cool. If you don't get a response, you don't, but you did your piece, which is huge.
Yes. Yeah, I understand. Like, sorry, go ahead.
No. Continue. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just saying on that note, it does make sense from the recruiter's perspective that you would get bombarded and you have so many things on your plate. And being on the job hunter side, I believe that the responsibility should be shared, or more even on the job hunter side, because they are looking for an opportunity. So it would help the person who's seeking the job to take more steps towards the recruiter. So that makes sense.
And with regards to the length of your journey, how long was it that you were looking for your new role? Give the listeners some insight on that.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to be embarrassing at all. So, well, the first time I was looking for a job I believe I was still in college, but I still wanted to get some experience. So I was looking for months, and I remember feeling like, oh, I know I can get, like, I just have to like make my resume better, and I know like I have these skills, so I can get a job within a month. And like I believe these expectations can sometimes like really ruin your progress, because I would go with like full force in the first month, and then it would like keep decreasing. So now if I know that I want a job in like 4 months down the line, I'll start right now, because I like the back and forth and the interview process is so long, and you can't just think that, oh yeah, once I'm out of college, I have a degree. Like I know a lot of it, like, a lot of times, so people get a job right after out of college, and if you take that example as a generalization, it's not going to work. So it's good to just start like beforehand and give it a few months of buffer time. So for me, like that 1 month went into at least like 45 months, where I was just like going every day and getting less and less time invested in there. But I believe with experience, it's good. It's safe to say that just start like 5 months in advance and give yourself that time.
There's this rule of thumb that I've heard that I think fits really well. I think for every $10,000 of salary, you have to devote at least 1 week of search. Renee, what do you think of that?
It's something about, that's about right. That's totally about right. And Shivani, you're absolutely right. And a lot of students do not understand this. They wait too late. They wait until graduation day, and then they, flip the switch and say, oh, I'm going to look for a job. And it is, I tell them all the time, start early, start often. If you can get internships, if you're an undergrad, get those internship opportunities. Your internship opportunities lead to your full-time jobs. And a lot of people, I get that we do have career transition folks that can't do an internship, but for the folks who can do an internship, that is like your number one priority in your junior year, is to get an internship, because that internship will likely, if you do a good job and they have the budget, which they typically do, they will want to hire you as a full-time employee. And then, with the job search with the master's degree, folks, start early. It's like, sometimes the master's degrees are a year and a half. In the first couple weeks, you should be out there just looking around. And granted, a person won't know exactly what they want to do in security, but being at the meetups, going to the places, being a part of the community is going to be key for when it is time in a couple months to kind of start that search. So excellent points there.
Earlier you mentioned the Women and Coders in DC Slack channel. Within that Slack channel, did you just use it for job hunting, or did you use it for mentorship or guidance or anything like that?
So I believe that that specific group was strictly for channels. I'm pretty sure that there are other resources. Like I am a part of a LinkedIn group that has a mentor and mentee connection group. So they always have a lot of people communicating. However, so far I haven't like used that resource as much. So in my personal opinion, I have used, from a personal experience, I've used my ex-boss, because I feel like all my managers, I've been grateful to them, and they are really like, they want me to grow. So it's really good to have people like that around you who are guiding you. There's also my CEH instructor, who was so, I believe I can't describe how skilled he was. And I was always in awe at like how many things he could just like say in the passing that would make me feel like I need like hours of research on what you just said. So it's good to have people like that around you. And I believe if you don't have like a mentor assigned to you through any of these groups, it's just good to go to a meetup, and there are people who are, just teaching for free. I believe there was one CE-ish meetup in Nova. I believe, what was it called? Nova IT Club. It was in Reston. So they all were like really skilled people with like decades of experience and just there to help the community. So you will get those people in meetups, and it's good to have them just in touch, be in touch with them.
I love your points about getting the mentors and having multiple mentors. And I think sometimes people think like, oh, I just have to have one. And you can have folks at all different levels and be able to reach out to them to ask for advice. And the least amount of effort, or not effort, I'm sorry, the least amount that you ask of them, the more likely they are to be able to help. And I know some folks tend to sometimes get disappointed, like, oh, I have this one mentor and I can't get the time and what have you. And, folks are definitely, from a mentor perspective, really busy, dedicating their time and efforts. So especially when you can get into those meetups and have group, like you said, go to the various local meetups and connect with people who are in the industry, and they're so willing to help mentor you.
Yeah.
That's my 4-year-old in the background, FYI. Half on mute for me.
So about your job journey, you mentioned it took several months. Do you mind sharing how many places you applied to, or how many interviews you went on, to give our listeners just some perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. However, I don't have an accurate count on it. I didn't keep count on the online applications, certainly, because those were way too many. But I do know that after you get any for IT, I had several dozen interview for a lot of times, but the last round usually would just be getting to know you, and yes, you're in. So if you're making it to the last round, it's most certainly a yes. That's one thing that I saw. But I would say every day I would apply to at least 5. This is when I was not, in full force, I would do at least 5. And if I was super just starting the first month, I was doing 10 a day or 15 a day. And I would just go on different websites, go on LinkedIn, go on Indeed, Monster, everything that they listed on Google on the first and second research, search result. I just went on each and every one of them and made the most of it. But yeah, I would say that instead of doing that, you can still do it. You might still get something out of it, but try to focus your efforts on something that has proven to give you more results.
Do you have any tips and tricks to share with regards to formatting your resume, for targeting it to certain job roles, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing for resumes I have seen is a lot of people it's either I see 2 extremes usually. It's 6 or 7 pages of resume that's just spread out, they just break down each and every task into 5 points, or it's super compact. So I usually keep a rule of thumb that if it's a few months project that I did, then I should have just 3 or 4 points about it. And if it's a longer project, then I have more to list in there. So I try to keep it 1 to 2 pages, not more than that, because recruiters do not really want to go. From what I've heard, there might be exceptions, but most of them don't want to go through a 7-page resume unless it's for a C-level position. So yeah, I try to have more technical specifics instead of just saying that I performed vulnerability testing. I want to use all the tools I used and also use the results that I got, or how I try to go and fix them. So it shows both sides, but I want to have more specific information instead of just giving an overview. They also certifications definitely help, because I'm seeing more and more positions that require you to have at least Security Plus, at least CEH, at least CISSP. It's crazy that sometimes they ask for CISSP for a junior level position, because that requires you to have years of experience, and it doesn't match. But it's a good idea to have some of them on your resume so that you're able to at least pass that first prerequisite batch.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with you there. I know myself, as well as many in the industry, are really fighting back on the certification requirement bloat, as I call it.
Hmm.
You don't need a CISSP for a junior role, and actually, that cert is really geared towards management than
Exactly.
technical folks. But having some of the basics, showing interest, showing curiosity from the hiring manager side are the things that I look for. But one of the points that you touched on when you tailored your resume or you did your resume, showing results. That's definitely something that recruiters love when you show actions and the results that they gain rather than just details of what you did.
Yes. One more thing I would like to add to this, because
Hmm.
just because we're talking about recertifications, if there are people, because I know this program that they had that we offered in my last company. However, I was just surprised by the number of people who were not aware of it. It's the WIOA program, WIOA. If you're underemployed, so for students who are working like part-time jobs and are not earning, you know, a lot of money, then and they still want to get into the industry, they can go through this program, which is funded by the government, and they can get certifications through them, so that they still have like good education and good source to put on their resume, but they don't have to pay like thousands of dollars for it. So that was one really helpful thing that I feel like was not marketed enough.
No, definitely. And I think the first step, though, is to try to figure out where you might want to go, what sort of transferable skills you have, what makes you passionate in the field. That way, you get a certification that tailors to your passion rather than just one for checking the box. Um, we're approaching the end of our time, and I wanted to see if there's any last words of wisdom that you wanted to share with our listeners about your journey or anything like that. Oh, I think we lost her. Um, Renee, I think we
I
lost
think
our
we
speaker.
lost her. Yeah, something happened.
Okay. Well, we are approaching the bottom of the half hour, so it's a perfect time to wrap up. Um, we want to thank her for her time and the tips and tricks that she shared. And if you're interested in sharing your story, reach out to Renee or myself. We'll be happy to schedule a time with you and have you share your story, your journey, so that you can help inspire others that are coming down a similar path as yours to help break into cybersecurity. Renee, any last words? Okay. Um, so thank you, everyone, and have a great Friday.